Hey everyone, it's Cory and I'm back again. And I guess that was the first glimpse of my shirt, which is actually our podcast logo and podcast name. We're going to be changing that soon, so the shirt's going to become old news at some point. But I'm back here. This was the longest break I've had all day between interviews and super stoked to be back again. So what we're talking about today, I'm going to talk about the speaking business. I'm excited to bring on a guest that I haven't interviewed before. As you know, if you've been watching the interviews, we're also launching our book today. So it's kind of to me, it's a way to give back and also bring some more attention to the book and give people a ton of insight that I wouldn't probably normally be able to do all in one day. So it's a win-win-win day. So I'm excited to bring on my guest today, who I'm going to get you to introduce yourself so I don't steal any of your thunder. But Galit Ventura-Rozen, really excited to have you here today. And I guess where it all starts is I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your backstory and journey for our listeners or video viewers who may be discovering you for the very first time.
Absolutely. So I work with women either in business or as a speaking mentor. And my journey has been one of being an entrepreneur for over 20 years. I run and own multiple businesses. I'm in Las Vegas, which I absolutely love my city. I've lived here for over 30 years. And my background really is that I've worked with men most of my life, probably for 20 years. And I decided a few years ago it was time for me to switch gears. And I'm all about empowering, uplifting women, showing them anything is possible in either being a speaker or in their business.
Love it. And so as somebody who was raised by a single mother, I have a great appreciation for the work that you're doing. And I also know that there's certainly major differences between men and women. I mean, there's certainly men that are, maybe more in touch with their feminine side, if you will, and other men that are not. And there's certainly differences. So I totally get making that distinction for your own business and brand. So where I'd like to start first, before we dive into the work you do and what you've learned over the years, things like that, how about yourself in terms of you're now coaching people in the speaking business, you're helping people launch their speaking careers. What's your background, I guess, as a speaker, how it relates to that, and how did you kind of go down that path yourself?
It's so fun because someone said something the other day that I spoke to, and it just stuck with me. And they said, speaking just happened to me. And I don't know if you can relate to that, Cory, but it's so interesting to me because speaking really happened to me. My journey is one that I'm the girl that when I was 7 years old, something happened to my voice and I actually lost it. And I didn't have a voice in a sense for years, and not figuratively, literally. So I spoke almost with a whisper for probably about 5 years. And I had to find my voice figuratively and literally. So going from doctor to doctor, I found out I have a nodule on one of my vocal cords. And thank God it's benign and I don't have to stress about it. It's going to be there forever. When I went back when I was 16, I was asked if I wanted to have the surgery to remove it. But I would actually have to relearn how to speak. And this was the voice I came up with around the age of 13 through speech therapy. And I said, oh no, this is my voice. This is what's molded me into who I am. So if anything, my journey is one that I tried to stay out of the speaking world. I did not want to be the one called on in class. I did not want to get up and give presentations. It was really interesting. So throughout this journey of having to really get comfortable with not the voice that I was born with, but the voice that chose me, because this is not the voice I was born with, I ended up finding myself more and more out there in front. And it just kind of became its own, its own world. So that's really how the world of speaking found me. And then as you know, when you start having an expertise, people start asking you to speak about it. So through my entrepreneurial world of being one from such a young age, from the age of 21, people just started asking me to speak about real estate, leadership, overcoming obstacles, and then it just developed into a speaking career.
Wow, I love that. So, and so when you mentioned about my journey, whether it was typical or not, it's funny because I can't judge whether it was, but I keep hearing from people through interviews, conversation, that they're blown away by how I started. So I have to think it's abnormal. But basically, I don't even know if I was looking yet for my passion or if I even knew what that meant. But I had a happy accident where I was invited to try stand-up comedy, and I bombed horribly on a stage. I didn't have the mic turned on, et cetera, et cetera. but I went back the next week and I kept going back. And people at work started saying, you seem like you're happier. Did you fall in love? All those kind of things. And so what happened is, as I kept doing that, eventually I saw this thing called speaking. And then I realized, like, Tony Robbins, I think, was the first speaker I saw. And I was like, is he getting paid to do this? Or is he only to move his products and, run the infomercials that were helping him sell his products? Because it's funny, he used to have infomercials. And I remember one time he said that people used to come up to him on the street and say, I used to watch your show every Saturday morning on TV, and it was actually infomercials that he was paying for time, and they thought it was a TV show, and so they weren't cluing in. I don't think that they were watching the same show every week. But anyway, I thought he was just like his personal power programs. That I thought he was getting coverage for it, but not getting paid to do it. And once I found out you could also get paid to do it, I was hooked. I wanted to try it, and so I moved. I kept doing stand-up because I knew it was an amazing learning ground for speaking, but I kept doing stand-up. But at the very same time, slowly but surely, I started speaking I shared this earlier today, but speaking at, for example, I spoke with this, I guess you would say they're like a fitness entity, a fitness corporation, and they paid me in gym memberships. And that was my first paid talk.
Oh, I love it.
But that was like my first month speaking. And then my other talks I was doing either for no fee or for like $200 or honorariums. And people were like at the time, well, why don't you just do it for free? You're getting such a small amount. And for me, my thinking was I need to place a value on my time right from the jump if I want to be a paid speaker. And what I found, and then I'll move away from the story, but what I found was that as I started talking to people throughout the years, more recently, there's speakers out there that have multiple TEDx talks. They've spoken for Apple, Google, Facebook, and they've never been paid for a talk. And I believe for some of them, the challenge was they started out doing it for free. And then at some point they're going, I've been doing this 3 years for free. How do I actually get paid? And they had the hard time making that leap. So I think I did take a unique journey in that I started to stand up, saw this speaking thing, and then also decided that I was going to charge, even if it was like a lunch at the hotel. I was charging something so that they felt we're paying for value with this guy, even if it's a small value. So I think I did start with a unique journey as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think that speaking chose you. So it's the same thing. For a lot of us, we didn't come into this field thinking, I want to be on stage. I want to be out in the public. If anything, most of us, we come from a place of serving and purpose and passion. And part of that journey just happens to be being in front of people. And if you want to continue to do what you're supposed to, and I believe this is what I'm supposed to do, then you need to get in front of people and talk about it. So it just kind of works out that way. And if you really are open to the possibilities, which I love that statement, you're open to the possibilities, things just show up and you just got to say yes.
So interestingly, and I'm going to ask you about in a second here, so don't let me forget this. I want to start jumping in deep now about building a career as a speaker. But when you mentioned that about open to the possibilities, I don't know why this popped into my head, but yesterday I was interviewing a guest who we've had on the show numerous times. So our listeners on our radio show and viewers on Facebook Live will be familiar with him. But he wrote the book called The Celestine Prophecy. James Redfield is his name. And so James, in that book, I don't know if you ever heard of it or read it, but it's a really big, it's sold over 20 million copies. And one of the lines, the whole book is really about synchronicity, and it's a business fable that teaches you about energy work and these different prophecies he believes that are almost laws, if you will. But one of the ones he talks about is mysterious coincidences. And what the idea is that there's no such thing as coincidence. You need to be attuned to them. So if you, like the speaking thing, if you run into somebody in a plane and you start talking and they have a speaking career and you ask some questions about it and you follow up with them, that could be the day you figure out what you want to do for your life. But most people will say, it was a fun conversation. And then, so anyway, that's the premise. So when you said about open to the possibilities, that's what I think. Be paying attention to why did this happen. It's probably not a coincidence.
Yes.
So, I digress. To dive in, as I mentioned, what I wanted to ask you about in terms of your approach when you're coaching women in the speaking field. I see there's two trains of thoughts as speakers. Some people think you should, for example, charge for your talks. And then maybe that, you don't have products, maybe you don't sell products, what have you. Other people think you should, there's probably three trains of thought here. Other people think that maybe you should go and speak and not charge for your talks, but you have a back-end business you're building. And then some people think you should do both. So I guess my question out of all that is, do you coach people to do both, to do one or the other? Is it different circumstances? What's your approach? Because I know people have different philosophies.
We just talked about things not being a coincidence, right?
Absolutely.
Right before I got on the interview with you, I had a client from 9 to 10, and I see my clients just like this through video. And she is my business client, but she's building up a speaking career. And the first thing I said to her was, let me tell you about the 3 types of speaking. Guess what you just did?
Mm-hmm.
You just talked about similar words, not exact. I actually work with my clients based on what they want to learn. So the real basis of what I do with my clients is I get them crystal clear, because a lot of people have so many ideas and don't know how to do this, especially when it's their own ideas. So I take their ideas, their expertise, their knowledge, and turn them into logical talks. Now, when I say turn them into, I mean I just give them the structure to be able to do it themselves. So we really walk through their ideas. And then I ask them, what is it that you want to do? And I actually ask them the 3 things that you said. So I call it selling from the stage indirectly, because I only do indirect. I call it speaking from the heart, which really is just philanthropic and free. And then I call it speaking from the stage and getting paid. So those are the 3. It just depends on the client. I will do a mixture of all 3. I will just do one, but really it depends on what they want to accomplish. I can teach you how to do all 3 easily.
Yeah, and something you said there, speaking from the stage indirectly, really spoke to me because
selling from the stage indirectly.
Sorry, selling from the stage, but indirectly. That word, because one of the things I run into, I find a lot of clients. So I coach speaking clients as well. I find it depends on the area you're in, so the market. But there's certain markets where speaking from the stage, selling from the stage directly. For lack of a better way of saying it, icks people out. I don't know a better way to say it, but I run into some clients that are just like, I can't imagine, because they've been to, let's say, a talk, and I'm not saying it's a bad or a good thing, but been to a talk where somebody's like aggressively selling from the stage. And I've been to talks myself, like Learning Annex one time I was at, where you couldn't leave the room. Like there was literally 2 people like this at the end of the room, and the idea was you'll be intimidated not to leave until you buy something. So I found that in certain markets, there's a lot of people in specific markets that they've never had that done to them, or they couldn't imagine doing it to somebody else. So anyway, I love when you said selling from the stage indirectly.
Always, always, always. It's about the idea that, all right, I spoke at the National Association of Women Business Owners locally. They do not have a budget to pay their speakers. Fine. But I will go ahead and give you something of value. I taught the women something amazing. And then at the end, I was able to put up my workshop flyer and say, and by the way, if you'd like to learn more, I happen to have a workshop and I'm having a special price just for you ladies today. That is indirect. So I believe when you come from a place of purpose and serving, you're not shoving it down their throats. And I don't know about you, but I don't want people working with me or coming to my events that I'm shoving it down their throats. I want them to feel good about their decision and want to go ahead and commit to that.
Yeah, and as a speaker as well, I'm on the page where I don't want to be sort of shoving it down anybody's throat, because that does feel just wrong to me. I mean, I don't know another way to say it. It just doesn't feel.
I don't like when somebody's doing it. Why would I do it to somebody else? But that's just my opinion and my take. That's the way that I operate, and it sounds like you operate the same way.
Absolutely. So that I just thought I'd ask you that, because I know that's a big question people have if they haven't been in the industry. Is I see some people speaking for free. I see some people speaking at their local Rotary. I see some people that clearly they're getting paid to speak. And where do I go from there? So I guess now if we go further down that rabbit hole, so somebody now, let's say if we're having this conversation, they maybe now been able to isolate why they're speaking or what they're going to do as a result of their talk or what their goal is. The next stage, Galit, I guess, is finding leads. I don't know if you get this question a lot, but that's the question I get. I won't say the most, but very close to the most, is how do we find leads? So do you have any, for lack of a better way of saying it, do you have a shortcut or a hack that you can share with us that you've discovered that really...
I can, and it's not going to be mind-blowing, so I'm going to warn you now.
Okay.
But it's something that people don't think about, and I get asked this all the time. And one of the things I do when I get hired by the women that hire me is I teach them all the different avenues, but one of them is called Google.
Google,
I know, you're going to have so much fun with me today, Cory. One of them is called Google. I am a big believer in keywords. If you have an interest, for example, for me, my keywords are women, expos, conferences, conventions. And so what I do is I actually put out there, and I have a speaker's assistant. That's a whole nother world. But I have someone that all she does is research events for me all day and put together lists for me and my clients. So I want you to know that lead generation is associated with being proactive. It's great when people reach out to me directly, and they do, because this is what I do and they can see it. But I'm not going to sit around and wait for the phones to ring. I've got other avenues, which include Google, and searching the type of events I want to speak at. So that to me is lead generation. And of course, that's only one piece. The other piece I teach is credibility and visibility, but the lead generation is really being proactive. And
so, that, I love it in the extent, like you said, it's not maybe something, when you say it, there's some people go, well, Google, of course I know how to Google stuff. But I think it's also creatively how you do it. And even if, like you said, if you're speaking on a certain topic area, maybe it involves, like, you think about it, if a client's looking for a customer service speaker, somebody's going to speak on customer experiences, type in customer service speaker. And you're going to find people to come up, and you're going to now know, you're going to be able to do research on who hired them, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of little, things you can do with Google.
Google is the first one, and I'm going to throw in a second one because this one is a big one, LinkedIn. Do the same thing with the search button at the top of LinkedIn. When I put in the words women expos, women conferences, women conventions, women empowerment, all of the people pop up that have either planned events, past events, current events, and are involved. And of course, I'm going to throw this in, even though you're not asking, please do not immediately message them and without building a relationship. I know we can talk about that for another 30 minutes, Cory. But there's a place there where you can start connecting with them, and there's a place there where you can start researching the actual events that they are involved in. So that in itself gives me a place to go online and research, let's call it the Santa Barbara Women's Expo. If I find that on LinkedIn, I now can do research on Google, and then I can find the contacts that I need to forward my information to directly, so that way I can be considered to speak.
And now you mentioned visibility and credibility, I believe, were the other two.
Yes, huge.
So I'd like to dive there because I know we have a limited amount of time today. So I think going down these paths will give people a lot of takeaway and a lot they can work from. So if we talk about, let's say visibility, because that's the one people probably get more excited about. I think because credibility, everything doesn't have to take forever, but at the same time, it does take a bit of time. You can't just go, like you said, you can't reach out and say, hey, how are you doing? And then say 2 minutes later, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. Don't you trust me now? So there's obviously at least some time built in between. So if we talk about visibility, can you talk to that in terms of, are you talking, you could maybe all of the above, but social media, I guess, maybe it's if you're at events and you're that way, like, so when you say visibility, what are you kind of, I guess, leading to?
What I'm talking about is this. We live in a world now that is amazingly small. The technology makes it so easy for us. So you want to make sure that you're putting out there in whatever way that you want. If it's branding, and this is the stuff I work on with my clients, everything needs to match up. The branding, the social media, all the different platforms. Do not confuse your audience. You want them to know who you are, what you do, and everything needs to match up with that. So for example, if it's books, published articles, interviews, TV appearances, social media posts, Facebook Lives, all of those things need to really align with who you are. That is making you visible. So if I'm putting out there, let's just, for example, say, one of my big things is I'm a big leader. I lead in a lot of different organizations. So I can speak about leadership because I'm living it every day and they're watching it. So indirectly, they're seeing me as a leader and they're thinking, oh, wait, one of her topics is leadership. She would be great for leadership. That's the visibility piece.
And what's interesting you said there as well, because this is something that I see in terms of when people come to me and say, and I see it online, people posting, oh, wow, I just, all you have to do is run some Facebook ads and you'll have 10 45-minute, $10,000 fee keynotes speeches booked in a month. That's not been my experience in social media. Going back to your point about building trust and what have you, I'll tell you where social media has really worked well for me and clients that I've advised as well, is the idea of building trust with them because they're already connected with you a lot of times before they're even looking for their upcoming event. So I might connect with them and they just booked everybody for 2017, let's just say, for last year. But let's say they're going to start for 2018 in 6 months. That gives me 6 months. And I'm not having to follow up, like I'm not having to chase them and say, are you looking yet? Are you looking yet? But if I can actually, when I start the dialogue, connect with them on social media and then come up on their radar, maybe share stuff so that way I'm the person that they see more often. But the point is come up on the radar. What I find is when they're ready to hire, I don't have to go through the same amount of stuff I would if it's somebody I just met off the street. But I don't find it's one of those things where what I hear people say they're doing all the time is you load your first Facebook business page and then you're flooded with 200 talks for the year. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying that.
I haven't seen that yet, and I honestly want to think that is if that's happening, they've probably already done the work to be visible and credible, and the reason that's happening is because they're well known and they've done the behind the scenes. At the end of the day, I believe that those are the pieces that are going to make it easier for you to book those paid speaking gigs.
And now the last part to the puzzle is the credibility. So how do you build, from your perspective, the credibility? And I know that there's a lot of directions a person can go there. Maybe it comes from their background or what have you, like what they did as a career before or what have you. But what does credibility mean to you? And what is the easiest way, I guess, even if it takes time, but what is the most efficient or easiest way to do that?
Look at where your strong suits are. Look at your past experiences, your knowledge, your expertise. If you have degrees, if you don't have degrees, what is it that people are telling you that they love hearing you talk about? Honestly, sometimes it's easier to go outside. And what you want to do is you want to recognize that aside from the logical credibility, which I work on my clients, and I know you do too, which is all of the things that they need, which to make them look professional, speakers, real speakers, press media kit, all of those things. It's also the piece that you want your talks to match up with, in a sense, your resume. And I'm going to say that loosely, resume or bio. All of that is what's going to give you credibility. And that's what's going to make you stand out from other speakers.
So interestingly, and I'll just tell you, when people read my bio, I even study that now because I'm like, what's resonating? What piques their interest? And so, it's crappy because I'd love to say there's a shortcut to this, but nope. Not as quick a shortcut as I'd love to say. But what resonates with me is exactly like what audiences is exactly what you'd think. So I have TEDx talks. As soon as people hear TEDx, if they know what a TED Talk is, you just see them go. And I've heard people at the front say, amazing. And yet there's so many TEDx talks out there, but it's still something behind that. Best-selling author, huge thing. I write for Forbes and Entrepreneur, and I see that as soon as the person reads my bio, I see that resonates. So at the end of the day, I think it's the things you think that probably resonate. It does take time, but I think you'd probably agree if you focus on it correctly, you can do it quicker than you think you can.
Yes.
Because the TEDx talks now, it's easier to get a TEDx talk than it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago when you could only be speaking on the main TED stage.
Right.
So people make it harder than it seems. But at the same time, I think we need to know that how you get there is you build a foundation before that. You start doing a podcast that nobody knows yet or write an article for a publication that's easier to get. And eventually you can go to Forbes. Hey, here's some of my articles. What do you think? But would you agree with that it takes time to build? But
I do. I think it's both pieces, because most of the women that come to me, they're already speaking for free in some shape or form, putting on workshops, whatever it is that they're doing. And they've got the it factor, they've got the experience. They don't need to be 100% ready in the credibility and visibility. I can even work with them in a matter of 6 months to build that up. So I just want you to recognize, whoever's watching, that you've probably been doing the work indirectly if you're ready to be speaking or if you're already speaking. It's just a matter of recognizing that there's some other pieces associated with it that really makes you look professional and as a credible speaker that someone is going to hire.
Love that. And what I will say too, just to kind of, I guess, back up from what I said as well, it took years to get there where, you can add that stuff to your bio. But I will say this. Now I study it because they're on my bio and I'm like, well, what's resonating? Because it tells you also, I want to keep as short a bio as I can because I feel bad when the person's reading this long bio.
Yeah,
So what are the main elements that resonate with people? At the same time, you're not there until you're booked. So
Yes.
as far as getting the booking, you could have an article on, and you could enter name here, right? The Elephant Journal, just whatever random name. But if that article speaks to what the client's looking to hire somebody about, that's probably as significant as if it says Forbes at the top. It's just once you have those other elements, that maybe you can raise your fees more, stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, it's the takeaway probably is get the articles out there, do some writing, do some stuff, even if it seems small at first, because if you have 10 of those small things, that will probably look as strong as 5 of the big things.
It goes back to Google, Cory. People Google you and what pops up. Google yourself. Find out what comes up. I had somebody just the other day at an event say, I Googled you. Oh my gosh. So I know I'm doing a good job. All my articles, my TV appearances, my speakers reel, and I know for you too. So it's really about what's out there, because at the end of the day, even if they're using LinkedIn, they are going to do research on you, and you want everything matching up. You don't want there to be any confusion that the topics that you want to get hired on speaking, you want to make sure they know it is your area of expertise.
Agreed. So, Galit, this has been a pleasure, and it's too short. I'm looking at the.
No, it goes by so fast. We love to talk too, so forget it.
Well, what I'd love to do is extend the invitation. I think I mentioned I'd love to bring you on our top-rated show, our radio show. At the same time, and by the way, there's an example now. My head's always on. We have to sort of tell people about ourselves because nobody else will. Even I insert top-rated show, not even intentionally,
That's
but
okay.
it's like that.
That's called indirectly.
Yeah, I guess it's the internal brand that's always on now. But I'd love to bring you there, but also maybe look at bringing you onto another Facebook Live, because I know I'm going to get a ton of questions and people saying I want to hear more about this. So thank you so much. And my only super duper quick question left is, how can we connect with you to learn more?
Everything you can find about me is under my full name, which is Galit Ventura-Rozen. I'm on social media, all social media, online, website. Everything is branded under the same name. So just me.
Love it. Thank you so much. And like I said,
good luck.
Continue. Thank you. And we'll chat. I'll circle back very soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay.